Hello student. So we are continuing with our functions and we are on undefined functions. A function is undefined, is said to be undefined, or you can call it meaningless. It is undefined, or a function is said to be meaningless, or is said to be infinity. It is said to be infinity, undefined, meaningless, or infinity if and only if the denominator is equal to 0. So remember this, that it is a big point. Whenever they say function is undefined or meaningless, the denominator is equal to 0. The denominator is always equal to 0 for undefined, meaningless, or infinite functions, or you can call it is an infinite function. For infinite, meaningless, undefined functions, denominator is equal to 0. For example, if we have f of x that is equal to maybe 4 out of x squared minus 4, and then we are told to find the values of x for which the function f of x is infinite. So it is infinite. We say f of x is infinite. F of x is infinite if denominator, if deno is equal to 0, such that this implies 2. This will imply to a fact that x squared minus 4 is equal to 0. Take the 4 the other side, x squared is equal to a 4, such that we can take the square root on both sides. We take the square root here and the square root here, and then this is just square root of a real number, so it is positive or minus, so that my x will equal to positive or minus 2, and they will always, if there is a square or a quadratic expression, then there will always be values of x, not that a value but values. In other words, the x is equal to plus or minus 2 is meaning that my x is equal to 2, or my x is equal to a negative 2. So that is what it means by a meaningless, undefined, or infinite function. Simply, the denominator is always equal to 0. So student, we can move to the inverse of a function. We've looked at undefined functions where denominator is equal to 0. So what does the inverse of a function mean? I know you easily remember the concept of making the subject of the formula. This is what regardless we employ here. For example, if I have my function h of x, I can have h of x as equal to 2x minus 17. The inverse of a function h of x is noted by h inverse of x. That is how the inverse of h of x is written. It is written as h arc negative 1 of x, such that if I'm to find h, I can let, if I'm to find the h inverse, I can let m to equal to my function h of x, so that I can have my m that will equal to 2x minus 17 so excuse me, such that now I bring about the concept of making the subject of the formula. I make x the subject, such that I make x the subject, that afterwards I replace it by the inverse. So I can have, I bring the 17 this side, I can have 2x is equal to m plus 17. I remove the 2 by dividing everything by a 2 by a 2. So by 2 ones, my x that is equal to m plus 17 out of 2. The question, I had no m, so I'm going to replace this m by x and x by the inverse, so that therefore my h inverse of x is equal to an x plus 17 out of 2 as simply my inverse function. So if we were to assume that the question continued and maybe asked us the h inverse of 3, what would this mean? It would mean in the function of the inverse where I have x, come and put me a 3. So this would mean that I go in the function where there is x, I put the 3 plus 17 out of 2. So this is going to be 20 out of 2, which will equal to a 10. As beautiful as that. Okay, so someone has inboxed me with that question, and I decided to do it for everyone from here. So we have that our function is that they want us to get the values of x for which f of the values, so not student, that it is the values of x for which f of x is equal to 4. So what does this mean? It means get me the whole function f of x and equate it to 4. In other words, as our solution, I'm going to have the function which is 3 out of 1 minus x squared, and then I equate it to a 4. That if I multiply both sides by 1 minus x squared, I'm going to have a 4 into 1 minus x squared. So I have 3 will equal to a 4 minus 4x squared, because the 4 multiplies this and that. So I bring the 4 this side and I divide through by -1. It will come as negative, so it means my 1 is equal to 4x squared. I divide by 4 and then I divide by 4. My x squared is equal to a quarter. I take the square root here and I take the square root here. This is positive or minus because it's square root of a real number. So my x is equal to positive or minus a half, or simply x is equal to positive a half and x is equal to negative a half.